Welcome to Men of High Value. This is Joseph Darling, the host with Mike from Washington State. What's up, Mike?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Awesome, great. So today we're going to discuss the 80-hour work week in combination with real estate. So Mike, you started your journey in real estate, I think it's about 5 years ago.
Yeah, a little over 5 years ago.
Yeah, so tell us your who you are, what you do, and also how you got started with real estate.
Sure. So I'm a father first, a single father. I have full custody of my son. I'm a police officer. That's my regular job. Police officer. I've been on a SWAT team for over 5 years. And a little longer than 5 years ago, I started investing in real estate. I recognized that I didn't want to have to get shot at for a living for the rest of my life. You can only be young for so long. And so I said, well, how am I going to create for myself a financial background or foundation that can support me, hopefully not working until I'm 70, maybe retiring early, something crazy like 40, something like that. And so I started looking around at a few different options. And here in the US, people talk about stocks and cryptocurrencies and, of course, starting your own business. And what I chose to do was invest in real estate. And so the first thing I did was buy the duplex I still live in today. I rent one side out, live in the other side. Then from there, I said, well, shoot, it's really expensive in the Seattle area, Washington, where I'm from. And for people who aren't from the US, Seattle is where Amazon is based out of, Starbucks is based out of, and Boeing, the airplane. So it's very tech heavy, very, very expensive city. And I said, well, I want to invest somewhere where the numbers make sense. So I started investing in the Midwest. That's the middle part of the United States. And I started buying up rental properties in Indiana. And initially I was buying them kind of already remodeled, but eventually I transitioned into buying up fixer-up properties, even sometimes abandoned properties, remodeling them, putting tenants in it, keeping it as a long-term rental. So I've gone from over 5 years ago, a guy who had no money in his bank account, recently divorced, didn't even have custody of my son at that time, no rental properties. I was a renter. And in a 5-year period, I now have 21 rental properties, full custody of my son, $200K a year, still single, but that's by choice. But life has changed for me pretty substantially in just a short time. And so what I try to tell people is kind of going along with your message. If you work hard enough with a goal in mind and just keep hammering it home over and over again, never giving up, eventually you're going to get there.
Amazing. That's a crazy story, to be honest. I love that. How old are you now, by the way?
Oh man, make me feel bad. I'm 33, old.
How old do you think I am? I always love asking that question.
I would say you're probably 31, maybe 30, 31.
Okay, cool. I'm turning 38 this month.
Dang, bro. I hope I look that good when I'm 38.
There
Jeez.
you go.
Yeah.
Appreciate
Dang.
that.
Well done. Yeah. I mean, that's a compliment. If anybody tells me you could still pass for you in your 20s, I'm like, thank you. I appreciate that.
Exactly, right? Yeah. Now I got my wife, got 3 kids as well, so I know how the family situation thing is. And congratulations on getting custody, by the way. That's a very difficult thing to get in America and anywhere else.
Very, very. It's hard just to get 50-50 as a man in the United
Right?
States. It's very
Yeah.
hard.
So well done on that. Cool. So I'd like to hear more about, like you mentioned, 21 rental properties. That's, by the way, insane. And 200K a year. Well, what do you mean by 200K a year? You're talking about in terms of income or
Yeah.
how?
Yeah. Yeah. So if I look at the total amount of rent that comes in a
Okay.
yearly basis, it's about
Okay.
200,000. Now, from that 200,000, I have mortgages. I've got property managers. I set aside money for vacancies maintenance. By no stretch of the imagination is that all profit.
Right.
And I throw that number out there just because it's like just a easy, like, oh yeah, you can bring in a significant amount of money relative to what your expenses are. But obviously from there, what I'm shooting for is somewhere between like 30 to 45% of that to be profit
Yeah.
once everything has been stabilized and then optimized. And that's usually a pretty long process.
Right. And that's after taxes, would you say?
Yeah, so you don't pay taxes. You don't pay taxes on rental income. That's one of the reasons why people should invest in real estate. If you actually look at the laws, the tax laws, the way that they're written, we can tell who Congress and who the politicians like the most. And those are the real estate investors.
Mm,
Congress, in at least in the US, they don't want to start businesses and they don't want to have to own and build houses. So the best tax breaks in the country are for business owners and for real estate investors by like leagues beyond cryptocurrency and stocks or anything, certainly earned income where you could pay 30, 40, 50% of your salary could go to taxes depending on where you live. But when it comes to real estate investing, there's so many write-offs that I
Yeah.
pay $0 legally in taxes because of all the write-offs.
Dang. So, okay, so let's run it back a little bit. In terms of, did you ever buy a bad deal? Because there's a difference between good deals and bad deals, right? Good deals are the ones that actually, have positive cash flow, and then bad deals are those that have negative cash flow, but you're still hoping that over time appreciation is going to go up and you're going to make money. Yeah, could you tell us a little bit about that part?
So I, with my SWAT background, am a master of planning for contingencies. That's all that the SWAT lifestyle is. We've got a crazy barricaded subject in here. What do we do if he comes out guns blazing? What do we do if he gives up peacefully? What do we do if he takes a hostage? What do we do if he harms himself? Any number of different things. You have to have all these contingencies lined up, ready to go on a moment's notice to handle the situation. Well, I approach investing in real estate the exact same way. So when you say, have I ever done a bad deal? The truth is, and I'm very proud to say, no. Now, I've had deals on the spectrum that were not as good as others. I've certainly had deals that didn't end up being as good as I wanted them or as good as I thought they were going to be. But to date, knock on wood, I have never had a negatively cash flowing deal, and I have yet to lose money on a deal. So everything that I bought has at least made me money, even if it was just a little bit. Now, at the end of the day, you could say, well, was that much money worth all of the work you put into it? Probably not, but that's still better than losing money and putting a bunch of work into it, which is how I would define a bad deal, is when you lose money. But if I had to say what my worst deal was, when interest rates started to go, and this is maybe only for your US viewers who might remember when the Fed started raising interest rates in 2022 to try to combat inflation. Interest rates raised from 0 to 5.25% at the fastest rate ever that the Fed has raised interest rates. Well, what that does is make it more expensive to borrow money. So when I'm working on a remodeling project and I know that at the end of the remodel, when it's all done and I'm ready to go to a bank and say, I want a loan for this finished property, the projections I had for that loan 6 months prior to finishing it were what the Fed had rates at then, which was at the 0% rate. So I was like, oh, I'll get like a 3 or 4% interest rate. But 6 months later, now I'm looking at a 7 or 8% interest rate. And what that ends up translating into is that I'm spending more money that could have been in my pocket, and I'm giving it to the bank and paying off interest. So that was like the worst deal I ever did, was the one I happened to do in the 6-month time frame where the Fed jacked rates up, and it sucked. But I still made money at the end of the day.
Dang, interesting. So, do you have variable interest on some of those properties, or is it all variable, some fixed? Like, what do you got?
I do not recommend people do adjustable rate loans or variable interest rate loans at all as a beginner. Now, maybe down the line with certain products, like for instance, a commercial loan. If you do a commercial loan, 5 units or more, you can't usually get fixed rate. There's a couple lenders that might give you a fixed rate, but typically the industry standard is an adjustable rate mortgage with commercial loans. So one of the reasons why I don't recommend newbies start out with commercial properties. If you look at a single family house, a 1 to 4 unit building, you can get 30-year fixed rate debt. The reason you want that as a new guy or a new girl is because you want to be able to plan for what your expenses are. But with an adjustable rate, you can't plan for it. That's what turbo screwed the economy in 2007. Q2 2007, rates go through the roof. People can't make their payments. They foreclose en masse.
And so out of those 21 properties, how many of those are fixed?
Yeah, so I don't have loans on all of them because some of them I've paid cash when I've raised money with a group of investors. So I have my first syndicated deal I did on a 6-plex, and that one was paid for all cash. So there's no loan on it yet. We will put a loan on it at some point. And I found a lender, there's actually 2 that I know of, that will do fixed rate on up to 8 units. And so if anybody wants that info, they're welcome to reach out to me on Instagram. I could send them the lender's info. But most of the time, 5 units above is always going to be adjustable. I know 2 lenders that'll do fixed rates up to 8 units. So a little Easter egg there. But everything other than that I have has 30-year fixed rate debt, or I did seller financing and I have fixed rate interest rates with the seller financers.
In your personal opinion, do you think that it's wise to do a fixed interest rate now? Like now that it's been jacked up because they might do more? Or do you think that this is the time where no, it's gonna come down again? Like or you should always do fixed when you're in the beginning stage?
So that's a good question. And I understand why people might be getting sold by their real estate agent or being given information that be contradictory to what I'm saying.
Yeah,
I would always tell you, when a loan officer gives you advice, they get paid on the advice they give you. So you got to take what they say with a grain of salt. A
right.
real estate agent wants you to close a transaction. So they're going to paint the rosiest picture that will encourage you to close a transaction. The person who's not got skin in the game, in at least when it comes to you, is me, your fellow investor. This is why I always teach people you need a network of other friends who are already investing, who aren't making money off of you, and can see through some of the stories that might get told. We'll paint it in the best light possible.
Right.
So if you fix your rate today, the rate today that I've seen, 6.7, maybe up to 7.2. Let's say you get a 7% interest rate, okay? And then 6 months from now, rates come down. You can refinance. 6 months from now, rates go up. You look like a genius because you fixed your interest rate. 6 months from now, rates stay the same. You're staying the same. There's almost no downside to fixing your rate right now because you can just adjust later if you need to.
That actually makes a whole lot more sense. Now that, yeah, when you say it like that, it's like, bro, you could just refinance later. It's like any lender will come in and say, yeah, you got this property, fantastic.
Yep.
And they'll refinance it for you. Okay, cool. All right, so let's go back to the 80-hour work week because this is something that I preach a lot on my channel. Uh,
Sure.
and obviously, my community, we tackle all sorts of different types of businesses, and we get advice from people like you. But I'd like to hear what did that look like in the beginning stages of your journey? Let's say, okay, you've made your decision. I'm going to do real estate. I'm part of this SWAT team, or as a police officer, and I'm working night shifts sometimes, and I'm working this, that, and the other. How did that look like? Was it like 3 hours at night in the evenings, or like what can you tell us?
Yeah. I think the video I made, so I made one a few years ago called "You Should Be Working 80 Hours a Week" or something along that line.
Which
And
is
it's
how
one of
I
my
feel,
most
by the way.
hated videos. People commenting on it, like, "Oh, this is terrible. How could you work for the man? You're slaving away. You're a slave to the corporate overlords. You're a bootlicker. Oh, and you're a cop. Oh, and you're a landlord. Oh, okay, I got it. You're a lazy bum." Now, the point of this, what I was trying to say isn't I don't want you to work 80 hours a week for the next 50 years until you die of heart failure. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm suggesting is the same thing you've probably been told since you were a little kid, which is that if you sacrifice in the short term, you'll benefit in the long term. If you can front load your working years, most likely when you're single, you don't have a wife, you don't have a bunch of kids, you don't have a bunch of otherly obligations like Joseph does here with 3 children and a wife who probably wants his time all the time. If you can, between the ages of 18 and 28, work 80 hours a week, bank all that overtime, save all the money from that second job. Shoot, 18 to 22, you might still be living with mom and dad. Living expenses might be so low, you save every single penny. Don't buy the nice car. Don't take a bunch of vacations. Don't get credit cards and rack the debt up on your credit cards. Instead, put that money into buying rental properties or investing in it. Even if you started a business, I'm not the expert there, but if you just do something other than splurge the money wastefully, it will say, shoot, just put it in a Roth IRA or something. You'll be so grateful when down the line, you're way further prepared for retirement than all of your peers. And so people misunderstand what I'm trying to say. And I think most of it's kind of a malicious intent to misunderstand. They don't want to hear the logic behind it because it doesn't go with what they're trying to say, which is that, hey,
Work
I lost.
smart. Have you heard that
Right,
one?
exactly. Yeah, exactly. They were like, oh, well, because, then you see books like, oh, there's the 4-hour work week. Like, oh, great. We got to
Right.
compete with the 4-hour work week with our 80-hour work week. It's like, yikes.
Oh my God.
So what I want people to take from that really is front load a bunch of work earlier on in your career and you won't have to do it later. If you work really, really hard for 10 years, but you get to retire 25 years ahead of everyone else, wouldn't you take that deal? I'm young. I want to enjoy my life now. Bro, you'll still be young at 32, 35, or even at 40.
Yeah.
Like, you're still young. You still have plenty of life. I don't feel that old. Neither do you. I mean, I jokingly say it, but like you got a lot of life to live.
Seriously. It's funny because that's how I found your channel in the beginning. Like I was searching for 80-hour work week because no one else has kind of that niche. And so that's
Right.
I've become the 80-hour work week guy, in
Nice.
my little subscriber count channel. And so that's how I found you. It's like, oh, cool. Like a real estate, developer in the US that preaches the 80-hour work week. So Men of High Value community, would you say that kind of aligns with what I've been, sharing for the last few years? It's completely the same.
So I like your men of high value. I really like that title because we keep, at least socially, as a critique of society here in the US, I keep hearing the term high value man thrown around all the time. So I want to ask you, what do you define as a high value man or a man of high value?
Well, there's multiple angles to take from it. I've been asked that question, and sometimes, I'm like, there's so many different angles. Like, what am I going to say? So, but the most important thing is, is your self-worth, right? So, is being able to see yourself in the light of, how the universe, how God would look at you. That's kind of what my initial answer to that question is like, are you actually valuable in the sense of doing service to mankind? That's
Mhm.
my biggest, big picture thinking,
Right.
of providing value for humankind as if God would do it, so do
Mhm.
what he would do. But from the other aspect is having lots of options. Like if you are high in demand and you've got a lot of options to select from, that makes you a high value man in general.
Mhm.
But you can't sacrifice the other one that I mentioned earlier for that one. So if that
Right.
makes
Right.
sense.
Right. Or it's a contradiction that's going to end up poorly for you, probably down the long run.
Yeah,
You won't be
exactly.
happy with the choices you've made.
Yeah. What do you think?
I,
Do you like my definition or answer?
I no, I think it's a good definition. I think that if you put, I mean, not everybody's religious. Not everyone is. Not everybody looks at things the way that God would, and I can understand that.
Yep.
Although I agree with you, I think that it's very important to maintain a perspective of maybe there's more to life than just me, and maybe I'm not just a evolved single-celled organism that's going to die. Maybe there is a greater purpose. I think that that's a good way to live your life, in my personal opinion.
Yep.
But for the people out there who are naysayers or maybe not believers yet, I would say at the end of the day, we can figure out what the definition of value is when it comes to anything. You look at something like gold. Shoot, you could look at something like Pokemon cards when I was a kid. Why was a Charizard valuable? It was rare, it was hard to obtain. Why is gold valuable? It's rare, it's hard to obtain. How do
Yep.
you become a man of high value? You do things that are rare and difficult to do. And working 80 hours a week to set yourself up to be in a financial position to retire early. That early retirement is rare. It's hard to do. Working that hard is rare. It's hard to do. Making that type of money is rare and it's hard to do. If you want to describe yourself as valuable in any context, you just simply have to look at what's rare and what's hard to do. And to your point, living your life in a way that is consistent with the values that are typically ascribed to God is rare, and it's definitely hard to do and requires discipline.
100% integrity and all that stuff.
Oh,
So, but yeah, totally agree with you in terms of, the example of the 80-hour work week. This is something that separates you from the vast majority of people immediately. Like you can choose today that tomorrow I'm starting the process
right.
of being in, the 80-hour work week guy for my, peers and family and friends and all stuff like that dude works 80 hours a week. Like
Yeah.
suddenly you've now joined the rare air, aspect of
Mhm.
people. And
Right.
that just makes you a high value man or a higher value man, at least from what you were yesterday, if
Right.
that makes
Right.
sense. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I did have a few more questions about real estate because, since that,
Sure.
that is your expertise,
That's
uh,
my niche.
that's your name. What would you say is the best real estate angle to go in for a new beginner? Like, so you've got, fixer uppers, you've got wholesaling,
Mhm.
should you put a down payment on your first one or should you try to find investors? I've heard you talk about that in the past. Like in the beginning, you
Right.
have no idea what you're doing. So
Mhm.
don't even try to get other people's money to help you to do it the
Yeah.
right thing, work hard, etc., etc. Like, so give me your 3 tips for what you should do if you're a
Sure.
complete newbie.
There's so many online programs. There's so many fake gurus. There's so many social media influencers that will try to sell you their program or their method or their mastermind or their boot camp or their group. They want your money. They want to take advantage of you. They see you as, if I could just get this guy to give me 500 to $1,000 and I can get a bunch of his friends to do it, I can make money. So many people make money. If you liken this to the gold rush of the 1800s here in the United States, there was the people who were mining for gold, and then there was the people that were selling the shovels. The people selling the shovels are the ones who got rich. Every now and then a random prospector would find a nugget, and that would fuel the greed to keep looking for it. But it was the business owners selling shovels that actually make the money. Well, the same thing is true with modern day. Now, that doesn't mean all online education or all courses are bad. Absolutely not. I have some friends who have some terrific courses that are very cheap when compared to a lot of courses out there.
Right.
But you have to be aware of the fact that people are going to try to get you to spend money you don't need to. I did not spend money on a course. I did everything by learning from books, YouTube, and podcasts for free. Okay, so you can do it for free. The best way to get started, in my opinion, is to figure out your number one largest expense, which for most people is rent or their mortgage. If they have a house, they have a mortgage. If they're renting, they have rent.
Right.
United States might be $2,000 a month. That's what it was for me. When I moved into this duplex, the mortgage payment for this duplex was $2,700. I was paying $2,000 a month, but I had a tenant next door paying $1,700 or $1,600 a month. So what ended up happening was I stopped being a renter. I became an owner, and I was able to take the rent I got from the tenant and pay down 80% of the mortgage. Then I got a roommate, paid another 10% of the mortgage. I ended up only having to spend about $300 a month to live. So by taking my number one biggest monthly expense out of my paycheck and bringing it down from 2,000 to 300, I was able to save the difference of $1,700 a month every month for years to this day. Well, to this day, I actually get paid because now one side over there is rented for $3,700 and my mortgage is still $2,700.
Nice.
So it's phenomenal. So now I make money on this place and I still funnel all that into my next deal. So when people ask me, how do you get started? This is one of the only things that I actually come down and say, this is how everyone should get started.
Right.
Buy a duplex. You get the same type of lending you do on a single family house. You can get in with just 3.5% to 5% down. You don't have to have super great credit. Obviously it helps, but it doesn't have to be super great. Saving a smaller down payment, and it lowers your monthly cost of living. It's just all around benefit. People will come back and say, well, do you really want to be roommates next to your tenant over there?
Yeah, I've heard that one. It's ridiculous.
Where you live right now in an apartment building, you already have roommates. Like, what? Sacrifice a little bit more. At least you own this building.
Yep, I've heard that one. So basically, house hacking. That's what you're saying is the number one
Best
thing.
way to get started.
That's where you get started. Perfect. Amazing. And how much would you say you'd need in a down payment for that?
So it's going to depend where you live in the United States.
Right.
Typically, you could get in for as little as 3.5% or as little as 5% down, depending if you're doing FHA or conventional style loans here in the United States.
Yeah.
So, on a $100,000 house, it's $3,500. Just multiply that out. $500,000 house, you're at what? It was like $15,000 or something. So it shouldn't be out of reach. If I had known what I know now at 18, I could have made that happen at 18 or 19. Yes, you're going to have to work 80 hours a week, save the extra money like we talked about earlier. But saving $15,000 to $20,000 over a 6-month to year-long period, if you really are on your mission, is not out of reach for anybody.
100%. Totally agree with that. And so would you say, like, for someone who's young and who can move wherever he wants to, should he move to a lower cost state in order for him to do something like that? Or should he try to stay wherever he is and bloom where he's planted?
Yeah, that's a really, really good point that you make. I think there's definitely some communities where it would be beneficial to move away from. If you live in the Bay Area, in San Francisco, in Seattle, in New York City, Manhattan, with you can't house hack there. These are like $8 million duplexes, right? You can't.
Right.
you probably don't have to go to the middle of the country. You might just have to go an hour and a half away. There's reasonably affordable housing in the state of New York, just not next to New York City. Same thing with Seattle. And that's exactly what I did. I worked in Seattle. I always say Seattle because that's what everybody knows about Washington. I actually live 45 minutes away. I moved 45 minutes away so that I could get a house 50% of the cost of living in Seattle. So absolutely what you do is, okay, here's where I want to live. Start drawing circles, go further and further out until you find something in your price range. And if you truly can't find something in your price range, yes, this is a beautiful country. There's places everywhere you could move that would be very affordable. But you have to determine whether or not you want to make that sacrifice.
There you go. So if you say, I love how you say that you didn't buy any courses. I mean, at some point you probably did because you wanted to get a bit more advanced on a specific topic or something
I
like
bought one course ever, and
that.
it
Yeah.
was so I could do a review on it. Because here's the dirty little secret. Most of the people that you really want to learn from,
Yeah.
like, I don't know how familiar your viewers would be with people like Grant Cardone or Chris Crone or Ryan Pineda or Graham Stephan, like meet Kevin, the biggest names in real estate on YouTube.
Yeah.
These guys, in my opinion, they either do like Grant Cardone does a real estate investing that you'll never do. You're never going to buy 500 unit apartment buildings. This is probably not you. It's probably not me. And some of these other guys, they're just very, very good YouTubers.
Yeah.
But if you want to find the best investors, dude, the best investors on YouTube have channels with 400 subscribers. Their videos get 50 views and they're worth $200 million. And when you leave a comment on their YouTube video and message them on Instagram, they respond. The amount of people on my phone I could text right now who have a net worth of $10 million plus is unreal, because I don't watch the big conglomerate educational real estate guys. I go look for those little dudes in the niches. And oh, hey, here's some random dude who owns the entire northwest part of this state. Send him a message and he responds. Super cool, man. That could be you. Go find those people.
Yeah, yeah. And that is basically, you know, an example of that is Mike. You know, I actually reached out to him on Instagram, and eventually I received a reply, and I've already recommended him to one of my clients. So there you have it, you know, Mike with 8K subscribers. And Joseph with 4K. Let's go.
But you know what though, man? Like seriously, I tell this people all the time. I tell everybody they should start their own YouTube channel about where they invest. Because if you make a video about investing in real estate, you're competing with thousands of other YouTubers.
I agree.
But if you make a video about investing in Northwest Indiana or investing in Gary, Indiana, there's nobody who makes videos. If I make a video about Grand Forks, North Dakota, or Birmingham, Alabama, or pick your random small city or area, no one consistently makes videos there. You own all the search terms for 80-hour work week. You're the 80-hour work week guy. I'm the Gary, Indiana long distance investor guy. People can Google it. They will see my face. Own the area you want. Make videos about that specific market, and you don't need 20,000, 50,000, 100,000 subscribers. You need 500 people in your market to know your name, and you'll get the first look at the best deals in that area forever.
100%. I totally love that. Cool. That's what we wanted to share with you guys today. If you have any questions, comment down below. I'm sure Mike will check out the comments once the video comes out.
Of course. Of course.
And yeah, hit him up, go and subscribe to his YouTube channel and check him out. And thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.